Hello, friends and family. Welcome back to another episode of Wide Open. I'm your host, Ashlyn Harris. And as always, it's so good to be here and hang out with you guys again. I love this weekly check-in and just to get to, talk to you and unwind and slow down and figure out what's going on in all of our lives. And this week, I'm super, super excited because the Business of Women's Sports Summit is here in New York on Tuesday, which is tomorrow. And the draft is coming tonight, the WNBA draft. So I just love this time of year. We just got the most epic March Madness. The Final Four was just electric. Not only was it incredible to see UCLA have so much success. We got to see the PWHL sell out Madison Square Garden as well. And I just think it's been a huge week of women's sports. And the fact that we get to see progress like this in real time, seeing Billie Jean King go out and drop the puck, is just really, really powerful for me. I got to have dinner with Billie this week, and she pulled out her championship trophy and her championship ring from the Dodgers. And I got to just sit down and have dinner and ask her some just like powerful questions about why she continues at her age to show up in such a major way in women's sports. Not only her time, but putting her money where her mouth is and investing constantly in new, whether it's flag football, whether it's PWHL. I just think she has impeccable vision, and being able to sit with her in her apartment and hear her wisdom and hear the way she talks about why she loves this so much really ignites something special inside of me, because I've walked away from sports because I was exhausted, because it felt hard, it felt overwhelming. I had to fight for every single corner and everything that we got, whether it was pay equity or fair playing ground or fair resources. And I just always felt like I was fighting. And then to sit with Billie and know she's been doing this and still continues to do it at 82, to watch that sold out game, to watch her drop the puck, to watch her look up and see all of these incredible things happening in real time. It just gives me the energy to keep going and keep pushing and keep working and to keep mixing myself in these ownership groups to really push for change and for better access. And from what she's done with ice hockey, because she believed in it, participation with young girls is up over 200%. And that's a testament to her vision. And I'm just really, really lucky that I get to sit in those kind of rooms and get clarity and just to get energized, to keep doing it and keep choosing it is something really special. I'm excited for all of us, and I'm excited for what the future is going to hold, and I'm excited to keep building. And I love sports, and I love where we're going in women's sports, and sitting on both sides of sport and entertainment to move the needle just feels like I'm right in my sweet spot. And I'm excited to bring you guys along the way. So thanks for being here, and let's get into the next episode of Wide Open. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wide Open. I am so excited for this week's guest, Jen Tullock. Some conversations don't ask you for permission or to perform. They ask you to be honest. And today's guest is someone who doesn't just tell stories, she lives inside them. You've seen her in Surveillance, but what stands out isn't just her work. It's her willingness to unpack identity, faith, queerness, and what it actually costs to become yourself. This is a conversation about unlearning, about truth, about finding your voice, even when it'd be easier to stay quiet. This is Wide Open. I'm Ashlyn Harris, and this is Jen Tullock. Well, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Wide Open. I am your host, the one and only. Welcome to the show, Jen, by the way.
Happy to be here. Lovely to see this Swayze hair on you.
I know. I don't even know if I want to call it Swayze because I was trying to fuck with your hairstyle, clearly. If I had your curls, I would
I'm
be
aghast. Well,
you are.
I chopped off my hair.
What?
Yeah, it's a little bit longer than yours. I wanted a cunty French bob because I said, if I can leave nothing else in 2025, let it be the cumbersome mat of hair that I had been dragging around for the last 20 years. And so it's like to here now.
Oh,
And it's sort of
sexy.
in like a triangular, it looks not like an Egyptian pyramid. So,
I am obsessed with you because a cunty bob feels really on brand in 2026. It
yes.
is literally April, and I'm like, I've lived 17 lives this year alone.
Imagine the sheer amount of collagen my body could be producing were we not living through so many simultaneous horrors. I think my tits would be under my chin like an airplane pillow. I can
Literally.
nap on them. But I'm not a scientist, but I do believe that gravity itself has been affected by the number of horrific events occurring in the world at once.
It's
What a time.
really what a fucking time to be alive. That is, I've abandoned. What did we say? We abandoned ourselves in 2016.
Oh yeah, I
My
haven't. The
my body's
lights.
still there. The lights
Yeah,
went
yeah,
off.
I haven't. And the truth is, there was so much horrific shit going on then that I myself didn't have the wherewithal to know about. So it's like things had always been bad and complicated in our country. But man, oh man,
Well, speaking
what a
of
time.
that, what a time. Speaking of that, I have to say I saw the very viral interview you did with Glad when you were protesting on on the streets, and I want to say we're gonna dive into your story, and it's gonna make more sense at the end of the show. But what you said and how passionate and how you show up and how you do the work and advocate and use your voice for our community is a gift, and I appreciate it. Not everyone in your world is willing to put themselves out there with this, landscape we're in. And
Yeah,
I appreciate it, and it means a lot. And I like
thanks.
what you had to
Likewise.
say was just so beautiful and so articulate and so heartfelt. And for those of you who didn't see it, which a lot of our guests are a part of the queer community, I highly suggest you go search it because it really hits home from where you were raised, how you were raised in a religious sector, and the freedom of expression in your life and these different chapters of you becoming who you are today. Like, it wasn't that easy. That space in between wasn't that easy. And as we continue to roll back all of these rights and jeopardize our human rights in our queer community, it is so important that we show up and advocate and show through our own personal stories that we're going to be okay, and we got to keep fighting. We got to keep rolling our sleeves up, and we got to keep showing up for each other. So thank you for doing that.
Same to you, my friend. I am very grateful to know you, and I've always been touched by and inspired by the authenticity with which you live your life and your family life. I think a couple of years ago, if you would have asked me if I thought my own individual story as a gay woman would be worth telling this year, I would say, no, I think we're past that. There are other folks that need the mic right now. Like, I'm
Hmm.
fine. And then, as we've seen such a swell of hate coming from this administration for our community, and we've seen the legislation that they've put forward and in some cases passed to harm our community. I'm like, well, time time isn't a flat line, and I think that it's also made me think a lot about the things I took for granted
Mm.
in other moments in my life, and I don't have any patience generally at the age of 42. I don't have any left for
No, we
anything, but I
don't.
really don't. I, of course, have empathy and care for folks who feel like being out and honest about who they are is dangerous to them. There are certainly communities and parts of the world where that isn't the case, and what an asshole I would be to say do differently. But I think for people who are granted a sense of safety, and by that I mean my physical life has not been threatened by being an out queer person. I dealt with some douchebags in my day, and I've maybe lost a job or two, and some straight bro was like, "How are you gonna play my wife?" And I was like, "I don't care, Scott, or whatever the fuck your name is, Michael, Adam, whatever. It's always a Scott."
Yeah.
And I think other than that, yeah, I don't think we're in a moment where we have the luxury, if our safety is implied in the community that we're in, that we have the luxury of not talking about this stuff. And
Mm.
I I want to talk about my life and my family because I'm proud of them. It's not
Absolutely.
solely political for me. I think it's probably more personal than it is political. I'm proud of
Yeah.
my wife and our family, and yeah, it's a weird thing. I was talking to a friend recently who is straight, and I was like, when you don't have a litmus for such a huge part of your personal life, meaning your sexuality and who you love, when you don't have a
Mm.
litmus for that in society at large, all of the mirrors of your life are obscured. You can't. We didn't. I knew I was gay when I was like 6, and
Hmm.
knew at that age like it was absolutely not an option. I was in an incredibly conservative Christian environment where AIDS jokes were flying around, and the homophobia was as extreme as it could be. And
Hmm.
I remember thinking, okay, well, I'm not normal. I've diverged from the path that is natural, what I've been told is natural. So I'm going to lock this away, and it'll be my secret I'll take to the grave. And that lasted for
Hmm.
about 45 minutes. And then, as you and I both know, you can't hold a beach ball underwater. So I think, yeah, it's I have a lot of sadness and empathy for queer people who are raised in high control or cult-like communities that were homophobic right now,
Hmm.
specifically in America, because it's intense to see the the dogma we knew to be true in evangelical Christianity or in Christian nationalism. It's intense to see it spoken this consistently at a national level, at a federal level.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of us ran the other direction, and had spent, all of these years healing that pain and that trauma. And now all of a sudden it's on CNN. And yeah,
Yeah.
I feel particularly equipped and called to speak on this shit because I know those communities. I,
Hmm.
I know I know that they believe they are fighting a holy war. And
Hmm.
I know that none of the people that raised me believed that their bigotry caused harm because
Harm.
they didn't see it as bigotry. They
Mm-mm.
truly believed. I had a mentor when I was much younger say to me, but Jen, if you had the cure to cancer, wouldn't you want to share it with people? Because she really believed that this like monotheistic worldview where Jesus Christ is the only way to eternal salvation was the cure. And
Yep.
so I struggle sometimes when I talk to folks that have never had an experience with high control homophobic communities when they say, "Oh, well, this is because they're dumb." And it's because they're ignorant, and I'm like, that's not
Hmm.
always the case. It's because
Mm-mm.
they've chosen to believe something they think is life-saving, and that's way more,
Exactly.
to me, insidious.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's I love when you're so articulate with everything and you've lived such a deep, rich life when it comes to a lot of these conversations. And it is a lived experience. And I was at your show, Nothing Can Take You from the Hand of God. And it's deeply rooted in your life story.
Yeah.
And you played 12 different characters. And it was it was so profound for me when I got it. And I never got to share this with you. So I want to share this with you before you talk about why you did this and what it's about for those of us in the audience who are listening that didn't get a chance to see it. But I had to get up and leave at a certain part in the show, roughly towards the end, before you tied a bow on everything. But I started uncontrollably coughing because I felt myself in so many of these characters.
Mm,
I was like a purge. It was just
mm,
like I had to remove myself. And thank God there was videos in the outside area that I could finish the show and not distract anyone. But even Sophia was there and she was like, are you okay?" And I'm like, I mean, I didn't even know what was happening at the time, but it moved my insides in such a way that I just started uncontrollably coughing. And it was like I must have been holding on to parts of your story that
wow.
resonated with me, and I had to release it. And I got to do that through feeling safe enough, almost in your story, that
Mm,
allowed me the opportunity that I probably had been carrying now for 25 plus years just
yeah.
to release.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I got to share that with you because I was like, holy fuck, I don't know what's going on, but I'm
Mm,
just going to write it and
yeah.
let it out. And after the show, you were like, where did you guys go? I needed to go.
I get it. I get it.
It was
Thank you for sharing that with
beautiful,
me.
but it was beautiful. And I would love before, that's how moved I was. But I want you to talk about, everyone knows you now, like from all these different aspects, but you're a creative fucking genius. I really would like you to explain because it's hard for me because I am not in the creative realm you are, but you're playing 12 different characters. You're moving cameras around. I'm trying to paint the picture of all these different visuals of different angles and personalities. Like it
Mm,
was fucking brilliant to be a part of. I want
I'm
you to
so glad you
explain it.
came.
Yes, please explain it to those who did not get a chance to see you live because it was magic.
Well, for one thing, I thank you so much for saying all of that, and that means a lot, especially coming from you because you're someone I respect and like have a lot of care for, and Sophia as well. There were a lot of people, some people I knew and some strangers afterwards that shared similar experiences. I think, and I hope the part of that play that was touching you and touching others was the release of the feeling that healing is not a linear experience, and there are parts of being raised in an environment where you're told that such a crucial and huge part of who you are is wrong and bad and needs to be
Mm,
changed. Just leaving that environment physically does not heal that. It leaves an indelible mark on it touches so many parts of our adult lives. And the
mhm,
reason I wanted to make that play, which is loosely but consistently inspired by my upbringing in an evangelical megachurch in Kentucky, and then being the daughter of missionary parents, we spent a significant amount of time in Poland. And one of the the mission trips I went on, I fell in love with uh, a woman there. Uh, and in the years that passed, I was a teenager when that happened. I continued to turn that story over in the Tumblr of my own memory,
mhm.
and I shared it in several mediums. I would still tell it at storytelling nights. I wove it into a couple of stand-up shows, and it never occurred to me that my fragmented memory, because of the amount of pain I've associated with that time and the way I was treated by some people I trusted,
Mhm.
maybe I fragmented my own memory. And I was like, I just kept getting so frustrated with how we tend to canonize queer people in film and television. We go, oh, well, now we know it's not wrong to be gay, and we've been so terrible to queer people. So we're going to make every queer character aspirational. They're going to be the good
Mhm.
guy. We're going
Mhm.
to focus on how poorly they were treated, and then we're going to dust off their shoulders, send them into the sunset, and say that's where the story ends. And for me, the the only way we avoid othering queer people is to portray ourselves as nuanced people who are also capable of harm. I think the idea of hurt people hurting people is what
Mhm.
inspired me to make that play. I said, I want to see a story about a queer person who's an asshole, who
Mhm.
has been so harmed and consistently let down by the adults in her life, and who was subjected to violence and pain and torment.
Mhm.
What happens when, instead of becoming a hero, she takes those experiences and metabolizes them into her own manipulative tactics? Because, like I was saying before, when you don't have a litmus for your own morality outside of a faith system that you leave, when you leave, what's right and wrong? I had no idea. I had to start over from scratch at 19. I was like, I don't know if everything I was taught is a lie, which is what I have to believe in order to leave it behind. I don't know what I believe. I don't know what is good or bad. I don't know what is kind or unkind. I don't know what is manipulative and not. And so I think a lot of queer people that leave the church make a lot of prodigious proclamations about, well, I've left there now and now I am free.
Mhm.
I'll never forget, I got to meet Tori Amos, who I love so much. And our mutual friend Busy Phillips sweetly
Ah.
took me backstage because she was like, I know how much you love her. And Busy said, Tori, Jen, when she came out, one of your albums really helped her get through that time, which is true. And Tori Amos, bless her heart, she held my hands and she said, and now you are free. And I remember
Oh.
thinking, first of all, what a kind thing to say to a stranger, and bless her for being that generous in that moment. And also, I wanted to be like, no, I'm not.
Mhm.
No, I'm not. Are you kidding me? No, I'm not. I'm just gone. I got out of
Mhm.
there, but I'm like the same broken on the other side of it. So that play was trying to tell a story of a writer who has monetized her sort of hero narrative about having left the church, but then in turn has gotten confused about what is and isn't true. And this came to a head in my real life because I sheltered from a tornado with my parents. I hadn't seen my parents in a long time, and I went to
Mhm.
visit them. Um, and like a bad movie, about 10 minutes into our visit, a tornado came through, not just their town, but their neighborhood, and we were sheltering in their basement. And that tornado killed people in their community that night. And my mom was praying, and I started praying for the first time in
Wow.
years, like by rote. And I realized in that moment, no amount of CBT and
Mhm.
uh, psilocybin journeys will untie that knot fully. This will be a lifelong experience for me, because in that moment, what came out of my bones was calling out to a God I claimed not to believe in. And
Wow.
so I wanted the play to reflect, yes, both the pain of being gay and a religious environment, but also the complexity of what it means to dump out everything you've been taught um,
Mhm.
to be true about the world and start over. And it's not always pretty. And I have found in my own life and past relationships, myself and the adaptive strategies I came up with did not always mean I was a kind and honest and embodied person. Oftentimes
Mhm.
in my 20s, it meant I was a chaos tornado. You want to, like, to be able to look at yourself and be like, I know I'm kind and deserving of love. And also, I have been toxic to people because I
Yeah.
was so lost.
Mhm.
And having to look in the mirror and confront that was why I wanted to make the play. So,
That's beautiful. And it was very impactful. And I have just so many questions about that statement you just made about, in these moments, you dropped to your knees and you started praying against the thing that made you leave in the first place. And that's a really confronting thing to face and unpack, let alone make an entire show about it
yeah.
to
And you
to
mentioned,
to to bring people into that story, you
yeah.
know?
the apex of that play is, as you know, a tornado scene. It's very
Hmm.
similar to the one I just described. And the reason we use the multimedia aspects were because I was like, what's the easiest way to literalize someone trying to control their own narrative? And there have been in recent years different versions of cameras on stage. Some of those I've been interested in, some of those I have not been interested in.
Hmm.
In this case, I was interested in not having a camera crew on stage, but watching the only human body on stage, me, control those cameras. So the protagonist of the story, Frances, is showing you what she wants you to believe about these characters. Well, these people are the bad guys. I'm blameless and pure. Until when that tornado happens, I don't know if you remember, but there's no more media after that
Yeah.
because she
Hmm.
can't control it anymore. And it ends with her singing a hymn on stage with no
Hmm.
cameras, no multimedia, because that, in my experience of that story, was what happened. I couldn't continue to control a one-sided version of my sort of escape story when my parents heard me pray. And
Mm.
I, yeah, I think queer people are deserving of safety, and we're also deserving of like complicated stories.
Yeah.
And I could get so excited when I see like a big studio movie that has a queer villain. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, that's actually really great growth for us because
Hmm.
that means we've circled around to being like, we are all things. We
Yeah.
are we are not just God. So often I read scripts that get sent to me or that I'm either being considered for or I'm trying to get a job in. And it'll be like, and here's the queer character, the one queer character, and
Yep.
it's the good upstanding lawyer down the street who wears a sweater vest and is a great
Correct.
father, or it's the, lesbian surgeon with a barrel curl, and nothing wrong with a barrel curl, don't get me wrong. But I say that because you and I both know what it looks like for
Yes.
media to go, don't worry, they're all nice and good, upstanding neighbors, and not like
Hmm.
there are queer people who are junkies. There are queer people who are
It's a
who do
a mixed bag out
yeah.
there.
And so I think that was what interested me was having the story of that person fall apart and to see the ugliest parts of her because there are ugly parts of us all.
Did you reclaim something in that process by being that vulnerable and exposing so many of these vulnerable sides of your experience? Did you reclaim anything in that, in doing that? Did you heal? Did
I'll
it
tell you a
open anything
story
up?
of something that happened the second to last night. I had been so fortunate to have conversations with so many people that came that had similar stories. I wasn't surprised at the sheer volume of people that said, I saw myself in this. I was raised in fill in the blank religious community. It wasn't just Christians. And being able to hold people's hands afterwards at the stage door and say, thank you for telling me. That means a lot. And that had been pretty consistently the experience. And I was really feeling fed by that and so grateful. And then the second to last day, we closed on a Sunday matinee. The Saturday before that Sunday, I had two shows. I had a matinee and an evening performance. And after the Saturday matinee, I went out into the lobby to see some folks. And I was talking to my friend Michael, actually, who plays my husband on Severance. And I love him. And I was so happy he was there. And I felt someone in my periphery. And I glanced at them quickly. It was two people. And my brain did the thing where it was like, I know them, but I can't remember how I know them. It was just like a nanosecond. I
Mm.
registered
Hmm.
them, but didn't immediately realize how I knew them. I kept talking to Michael. And then I felt them come into my eye line. And they began to hug me. And while they were hugging me, I realized they were two folks from the church I grew up in that had come into town to see this. And one of them was one of the many people that had loosely inspired the pastor character I play in the play.
Wow.
And I left my body. I hadn't seen this man in 20 years, maybe longer. And I became 14 years old immediately. Anyone who knows anything about PTSD knows that, the amygdala is the part of the brain that sort of comes online when we're frightened and often triggers a sort of child conscious response, which is 100% what happened. I immediately became the age I was when that person was in my life.
Hmm.
I won't go into details, but I will say that that person and the community I shared with him were responsible for some deep harm in my life. And I did not know what to do. And I looked at Michael, who had no context for these people, who was looking at me because he saw later, he was like, you left, I saw you leave your body.
Whoosh,
Your
gone.
face went white. It was like all the color drained from your face. I talked to them for a moment. They were incredibly polite. And they left. And as soon as they left, I was like, I have to go backstage. And I like was shaking pretty violently. And I think I had not been physically confronted with a person from that community in many years. And it fucked me up. I like went out, I had to go out on the stage and talk to myself and sort of energetically to the empty theater. I was like, it's okay. I knew I had to do a show that night, but my hands were like this. I could not believe he came. And I don't, to this day, understand why he did. And I think there's probably a spectrum of reasons. I don't know if it was because he wanted me to know he saw it. I don't know if it was because he genuinely wanted to support me. I don't think that's what it was. It didn't feel that way to me. But that's to say, until that point in the process, I'd been like, oh my God, this feels like such an untethering from a part of my life that was so painful. It also feels like a token of forgiveness. I'm really working on deepening my relationship with members of my family that I struggled with at that time, and who have done a lot of work and who have really, really offered a lot of compassion and contrition to me, and I am grateful for that. So this was a like sort of fucked up wrench in the gears, and I was like, oh shit. You better believe I called my therapist between those two shows. I was like, hello. And,
we're doing overtime right now, honey.
We're doing OT. But yeah, that in the end, I think was probably greater medicine than anything, because my body had to actually be embraced by this person who had expressed to me in no uncertain terms that I was ugly and wrong and bad and disgusting. And then my wife rightly said that night, I was telling her, and I was just like, I can't believe these people like walked into my house. That theater is like my church, not to be Pollyannish, but like it's my safe place. It's where I feel safe in myself. And she was like, yeah, but you know what? He had to sit there and listen to you tell your story without interrupting you.
Yep.
And no one can take that away from you.
That's
and I was
power.
like, you're right. So it was a good reframing.
I love that. And it is. It's you taking that ownership and power back, even if it put you back in that 14-year-old body who didn't have the words at the time. But you do now. And I think owning that is a powerful thing to now walk forward in this life after you gave such an experience to everyone while you were experiencing probably a lot during the same thing.
That evening performance, at the end of the show, the main character comes out, and there's only one prop in the whole show. There's just a black book that sits on a table.
Yep.
And for most of the show, that book represents the book that the main character has written about her life that contains things that may or may not be true. And in the end, it was a conscious decision to let that become a hymnal. And she sings this song, "The Lord Bless You and Keep You," which is like a prayer for safety for others. And that night when I stood on the stage and had to sing those lines, it was definitely tough to get through. But I'm lucky in that, like, I made it out alive. I've also, because of all sorts of other variables in my life, been granted access to more rooms. I think parts of my identity, say my whiteness, being cis, being an able-bodied person, have granted me access to more rooms, and my queerness has prohibited me. So I think also that's a part of these conversations that's interesting to me too, where I'm like, I'm also a femme presenting person. So for much of my queer life, people without a nuanced understanding of gender and sexuality would often not look at me and assume, maybe not today in my bomber jacket and baseball cap, but would not look at me and assume something about my sexuality. I think I, for lack of a better term, was probably straight passing in most circles because of my gender presentation and the way that I move through the world, in that regard. So I also think there's such an interesting spectrum when we talk about like our trans siblings in our community, or even our queer siblings who maybe have a different presentation that is a
Mm-hmm.
louder portrayal of their sexuality by heteronormative standards. I also know for a fact I have walked through conservative spaces, and straight men in particular would not immediately go, look at this queer woman. So
Mm-hmm.
I've also, I think, had to confront for myself, as much darkness as in my story, this vessel, like my body, has
Mm,
also granted me a lot of safety that I think other people in our community have not had access to. So it's one
absolutely.
of these, like we can hold both,
Mm-hmm.
and
Totally agree. I completely agree, and it's really well said because it is the truth. Like it makes a difference, and
yeah,
that's just the reality of it. And now as your career now doing surveillance and going on to the third season, um, is there a big difference for you? I know your life has changed so much because this is arguably probably the best show on the planet right now. And there's no coincidence. The writing is absolutely incredible. And the casting director, whoever put the pieces together,
Rachel
was
Tenner. Rachel Tenner,
it's
she's
just,
the best.
oh my, and you feel it. You feel it. And, your character has just been so grounding for a lot of people. And, that swing between playing yourself live and now acting, is
Yeah.
that a tough swing for you? Has this, because it was very back to back. And I imagine processing something so heavy and telling and sharing your life in such a vulnerable way, and now swinging into this, it feels like an important time or an important reward and an important, like, I love seeing you on TV all the time. And I'm just
Thanks.
proud. I'm really proud, and you're fucking good. You're
Thank you.
just, and it's crazy because you're funny and you could be so insanely serious and you're so smart. I'm like, what does it feel like to really have it all?
Like you can talk. I'm like, I'm not having that from you, okay?
Okay.
But I thank you for all of that. I I know some actors probably feel differently, but like I think doing stuff on screen and stuff on stage, there's such different muscles, but to me they they require the same thing, which is just trying to tell the truth, trying to tell the truth about the ugliest parts of human nature, and not
Mhm.
having judgment of whoever it is you're playing, and having to love them enough to portray them truthfully. I love them both so much. I was so happy to get to go back to the New York stage a couple years ago. I had been a long time. And I'm now doing like every play that I can, because it was my first love, and like it was my first
Yeah.
home. And I I actually got to do a workshop recently of a new play um, by this incredible writer, Reagan Morrow. And it the play is called Burn for You, and it actually had very similar themes as Nothing Could Take You from the Hand of God. It's about a queer woman who was raised in a really religious environment in upstate New York, and when she goes home to what she thinks is the funeral for her toddler niece, who sadly is suddenly passed, she realizes it's a resurrection ceremony
Mhm.
thrown by her sister's church community. And I was in this reading, and there's a whole scene where the characters speak in tongues, which is a practice that a lot of charismatic Christian sects
Mhm.
implement. And I looked over at the actress who was playing my wife, and she was also raised in a conservative Christian environment, and we were both like really struggling to with it because it was so intense. And I was like, oh man, it's such a different experience though, sitting in a theater and feeling that than watching it
Oh
on
yeah.
screen. They're both powerful, but I love that stuff. So yeah, I think, man, I'm always just grateful to work and to
Yeah.
do anything good and true. But it's been exciting the last couple of years to get to do as much of both as I have. And hopefully, touch wood, we're gonna do hand of God again in LA and maybe in London
I
next
hope you
year.
do. I really
I
hope you
hope so
do
too.
because it is so good. And I hope everyone gets the opportunity to watch it because you're magnificent in it. I mean, I
I
haven't,
appreciate it.
I see a lot, I've got a partner who's a theater baby and just like, she just couldn't stop. Like, and you talk about this, you've said it multiple times. I think the reality of which and how hard you guys work and the expectation or idea of what people think of Hollywood, you have no fucking idea.
It's
No,
it's
no
true.
idea.
It's a tough thing to assert because obviously there are so many trappings that come with even being on a TV show at all that are so cushy and so lucky and so luxurious. And also, I think for a long time, folks outside of our industry assumed that there were two classes of people. You were in Hollywood and a multimillionaire who had jobs thrown at you, or you weren't. And there is a working middle class in our industry. And I've been working in our industry for 20 years, but
Mhm.
for many of those years, nobody cared about who I was. And that was fine. I was doing plays I loved. I was making small films that I loved. And I loved my life. But now that, and that's only shifted, I mean, a tiny bit for me. I still have a very small profile, but being on a show like Severance
It's
certainly has
huge.
like moved
Yeah.
the needle because it allows more access. I've always said
Hmm.
I don't, it's not money or prestige that I've ever been interested. I'm like greedy for access. I want access to
Mm-mm.
make more things. If I can get the access to make my next play, to make my next movie, that for me is the currency that I crave. But yeah, you never want to be the person that's like, "Oh, no one understands how hard it is when we have any number of atrocities happening in our world that are so much more important." But two things can be true. It is, I've gone through periods where I was so broke and had so much financial anxiety.
Hmm.
And yet, because I had been in a thing before that people had seen, I
Hmm.
would get, for example, I'd get messages on social media from people I'd met once that would say, like, can you lend me $2,000?
Yeah.
I know you're a millionaire. And I'd be like, I'm so sorry, I can't do
Uh-huh.
that. I'm not in a position to do that. But I've talked openly about this before, and I think I got myself into a sticky situation because I have to be careful to not to like quantify human suffering. I have a roof over my head and food to eat, so I'm lucky.
Hmm.
But I do think, yeah, people outside of the industry make assumptions about,
They have no idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the consistent rejection and misogyny and ageism. And I was one of those people too. I thought, oh, if you get on a big television show, then
You're set.
all of the doors fly open
Mm,
and you're
yeah.
set. No, it
No.
just means you're lucky enough to have some more doors open, but you still got to keep pounding and still got to. So yeah, I think there was a period where my ego and greed probably like overwhelmed my brain a little bit. And I
Yeah.
went, I want more than I have.
Mm.
And I'm grateful that I got my ass checked because at the end of the day, when those strikes happened a couple years ago,
Oh my God.
and we were
Yes.
all out of work for really
Well, it
two-years,
was a writer strike, then
yeah,
an
the actors
actor
strike.
strike. Hmm.
And I'm so grateful to the folks in our unions who were fighting for us to have better rights and resources. But I, as an individual, I only speak for myself, was not a person who couldn't work for 2 years like that. So it was a scary time.
Time.
And I also know I was lucky that I have a partner that has a job, and I didn't, lose the roof over my head. And some people weren't
Hmm.
that lucky. So
Mm-mm.
I try to always contextualize, not deny my own suffering, but to
Yeah.
always contextualize because um, there, I don't love the sentiment like remember when you wanted what you currently have, because I think I try not to frame my life in retroactively that way, but it is
Hmm.
true. There are moments where I'm like, oh, you're complaining that you didn't get that job. Guess what? You have food to eat tonight and a loving
Yeah.
partner and good friendships and a brain that still half works in your head, even though you're smack dab in the middle of perimenopause. And listen,
Oh,
I knew things were bad. I knew I had stopped producing estrogen when I forgot the word for fork. And I was like,
oh
in English.
God. Oh
Um,
shit.
I was
We've got
like,
a problem.
things are. But it's a crazy. There are certainly people who were like mega stars who I think are probably untouchable in that regard. But yeah, it's we're still grinding. We're out here grinding. We're out here trying to make things and make things that speak to what we believe about the world. And right now, that is increasingly harder too. That access has been, I think, downstream of what we're seeing in the White House
Mm,
too. I'm seeing
yes.
a change and the stories that get greenlit. I was on a panel the other day with SAG, actually, with the SAG After Foundation, and it was
Hmm.
about the evolution of queer storytelling. And it was me, Hari Neff, the actress who's fantastic, Joel Kim Booster, and River Gaio. And we were all just talking about our experiences in the biz, and Joel made a film called Fire Island a couple years ago,
Hmm.
which is about a bunch of queer people. And a sort of weekend away story. And I think he's so brilliant and great. And he said, I know for a fact that movie wouldn't get made today. And
Wow.
he said, I think I probably slid in right under the radar. And I was like, oh,
Oh.
God, that's rough. And I even in small ways, I think have seen folks quiet down about their political beliefs on social media.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I'm in a way that I'm like, oh, I'm again, no judgment. I think everyone's I for myself can't shut up because that's not I just can't do it. I don't want
Hmm.
to do it. And again, I have access to certain types of safety that allow me to not shut up. But I've seen some people go silent on certain issues that I realize would not have gone silent on them um, 5 years ago. And I'm like, this is a
Hmm.
telling moment under authoritarianism when you see,
Correct.
yeah.
Well, with that, because, a lot of us are living in this shitstorm. How I want to know how you're protecting your peace and how you're protecting, you know, the noise and the loudness of what's going on because I find it some days hard to like get out of bed. I'm like, I just had therapy before this and it's like I can't even put my finger on things that in which I'm carrying sadness.
I mean, we have, because of the globalization of media, and certainly news is suppressed in so many regions in so many ways, including our own country right now. But because of the general globalization of media and social media, I think we are one of we are the first generation to have live streamed war and genocide and
Mhm.
authoritarianism, and we're still expected to go down the street and go to the office. It isn't normal to consume this many versions of pain. And also, I think for me as an individual, what that has meant is I've had to release so
Mhm.
many of the fallacies with which I was raised, the fallacy of American exceptionalism, the
Mhm.
fallacy that safety is a birthright, the fallacy that good and justice will prevail. That isn't necessarily always true. And because I was raised a white Westerner, I was raised with certain worldviews that told me, well, in the end, the good people will prevail.
Mhm.
And we are living in a time where that has been consistently untrue.
Yep.
And to answer your question about what I do, I think I've realized I have had to let go of my own individualistic, or try to let go of my own individualistic worldview and recontextualize myself against the world at large. And for me, that looks like looking at how much of my life was propped up by white supremacy,
Mhm.
by I was raised by a cop, and I love my father, and we've had many complicated conversations about his current belief that policing in America is deeply flawed and
Mhm.
inherently racist. And I'm proud of him that we've been able to have those conversations. But that's to say, I was raised the man in my life represented, a very pro military, very pro police
Mhm.
culture. That I was raised in that culture.
Mhm. Same.
Um, I'll put it to you this way. I heard someone say, colonialism is or authoritarianism is what happens when white people are treated like people of color. And
Mhm.
I was like, yeah, as important as it is, I think to fight the present evils, I think I'm also finding healing and having to confront how blindfolded I had been to the shit that was going on long before Trump was
Mhm.
in office, and here and in other parts of the world. And I that may sound like a really roundabout, like moralistic way of saying I stay sane, but it helps me
Yeah.
to educate myself on the shit that affected my worldview and kept it incredibly. My aperture was just so small for the longest time.
Of
We all
course.
think we're the good guy,
Yeah.
and I no longer think that. I think I'm no
Mhm.
longer aspiring to be a moral person. I'm aspiring to be a person with the all of the information because I
Mm.
can never fully undo the knot of um, the Christian nationalism and white supremacy and like America rah rah shit I was raised in. I'm trying, but
Yeah.
like that's no longer the goal because that's an individualistic goal. I just want to understand. So because empathy comes from understanding, and I think like sanity comes from not feeling helpless. So
Mhm.
I'm doing what we're all trying to do, like kiss our family at night,
Mhm.
take care of my body, and also do everything in my physical capability to contribute. And not
Mhm.
in a way that's messianic or performative, just in ways that I know are helpful. I'm like, if I can contribute a small bit of money um, to somewhere that's helping marginalized people, then let me do that. If I could put my physical body on the line in front of folks who are at higher risk of being targeted by ICE, then let me do that. If I and we all that's going to be look different for all of us, you know.
Mhm.
And so I think somebody said recently to me, like, it seems counterintuitive to keep our world small when we're addressing fascism and authoritarianism, but actually, local government, local community building is. I don't think that's just a like kumbaya approach. I think that is actually a practical one. I
Mhm.
think that like I'm trying to be more involved with my local politicians. I wasn't before. I was like
Same.
I
Mhm.
would vote for the president I believe to be the best, and you know I so I'm trying to keep my world smaller and more local. And I recently went and spoke with an organization that helps queer youth that come from high control cult like environments, not just
Wow.
Christianity. And I'm
Mhm.
trying to start doing more work with them because I was like, that's something I can speak on. I don't have
Absolutely.
I don't have the authority to speak on a lot of things. I'm one of the learners, for a lot of the issues I think that are on our minds right now. So where can I be a teacher? That's going to be a real small thing for me. And the one niche I have is talking about Christian nationalism and how it's affecting our country. So I'm like, well, maybe this is it. Maybe this is
I
the
love
work I'm
that.
supposed to do. So yeah, what about you?
And I love that. And I feel that in my bones. I agree. I feel like the only way I can handle grief, in which I feel that this is grief a lot that I'm carrying, and sadness, is to care for other people and to show up. That is like the only way. I have to be in service. And there are just so many people hurting right now, and it's like, in our community, our chosen family is everything. So I'm just trying to show up and support
Yeah.
and support and support, even when it's hard, even when I am on fucking flames, talking about riding it till the wheels fall off. I just want to support queer people and queer art and queer athletes and queer allies. I just want to hold our community tight because I know how exhausted we are. It's already
Yeah.
been hard enough, but this is something we're not new to. And I love that you're educating yourself as I am. I'm learning so much about finding my voice, understanding politics, understanding my own community where
Yeah.
I don't always have the answers, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to seek it so I can show up fully and help. Because you're right, I do have a certain privilege and I do have certain access. I do have microphones in front of my mouth, so it
Right.
matters what I say. And it's fucking exhausting. And the only thing we can do is continue showing up and educating ourselves and leaning into our chosen family, and that's our community.
I think so often about the lesbians that were there at the bedside of the gay men that were suffering and dying from AIDS in the 80s. And part of why I was there that day for that Stonewall event was because I live in the West Village and I love this neighborhood for many reasons. But the primary reason I wanted to live here, which now there are all sorts of jokes about the West Village girlies, etc. My childhood understanding of this neighborhood was that it was where queer people lived,
Yeah.
and it was where Stonewall was, and it was where artists lived. And so I feel very lucky. My little building that I'm in is mostly older folks that are in like rent stabilized apartments that are still here from that time. So spiritually for me, that's my idea of this neighborhood.
That's
But
amazing.
the reason I wanted to go, I think there were several events across New York that day. I was like, I want to go be with my elders. I want to go be with my queer elders. I want to stand with the old queer women that nursed these men when no one else would touch them, when they treated them like lepers. And I want to stand shoulder to shoulder with these men who lost half of their friend group and lived through unspeakable horrors and on whose shoulders we stand. I want to be, I think oftentimes you talk about chosen family as queer people, when we leave our home families or communities, we're not automatically put in the proximity of elders. Sometimes we don't have a relationship with a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, whatever, anymore. And so I think relationships with older queer people is so important to me. And I love them so much because they've seen things I haven't had to see. And I also feel like, you know what, my prayer is that we as like cis queer people can be that for our trans siblings right now, because I'm so touched by the heroics of those lesbian nurses during that time. I love those stories. And I'm like, if I have any extra rights because of the body I was born into, may I be of service to the members of our community that are even more scared than I am right now. And I think that I love that about our community. I love that about the alphabet community, that we historically have had to take care of each other and had to hold each other up, because it's not always implied anybody else will do it. So I think your what you said about offering care to the people in your life is spot on. I that day at Stonewall, I looked around at the people that were crying around me, and so many of them were over the age of 70, which would mean timeline wise, they had been present for all of those horrors in the 80s. And I just like, the reason I got emotional in that video is because I was there with them. And I feel so protective of the elderly people in our community.
Just to tie everything up, because I know we could talk all fucking day because I'm obsessed with you.
Same.
Thank you for being
with you, I mean, not
yes.
with me.
But I just really appreciate your vulnerability, your honesty. I appreciate your work because it matters and it's moving and it's intentional and all the things. So I just really appreciate you showing up and being so kind and articulate and smart about these like serious topics that are hurting a lot of our children, and even more than our children. It is definitely something that affects a lot of people in this country, and I just appreciate you being willing to talk about it. And
of course, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here, Jen.
Thanks for having me.
We adore you. We love
Likewise.
you.
Likewise.
Fuck. Everyone needs to go see all of the fucking things you're in because it is magic. So you also have a podcast that's coming back in the next few weeks.
I do.
Drop it to our guests.
I do. It's called Sure Fine Okay. You can listen to it anywhere you get your podcast. We're on a little bit of a hiatus because of some other work stuff, but we're coming back very soon. And I'm going to go on a limb and say you have to come on my podcast now.
Done. Absolutely. I would love
See ya.
to. All right. Well, that is it for this week. And what an incredible episode. So I really appreciate you being here, Jen. And thanks
Good
everyone
to
for
see you, girl.
tuning in to another episode of Wide Open. We'll see you next week. There's something powerful about choosing to live in your truth, even when it's messy, even when it's uncomfortable. And Jen reminds us that becoming yourself isn't a straight line. It's layered, it's evolving. And sometimes it asks you to let go of everything you thought you had to be or what you thought you had to become. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and share this with someone who you think might need to hear this episode. I'm Ashlyn Harris. This is Wide Open, and we'll see you next week.